Let me welcome former government minister and energy minister. He is Mr. Conrad Enill. A very good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Oh, good morning, sir. I'm very well, thank you for asking.
You're welcome. It's nice to have you here this morning. I know that you're on the move, but you took the time to be with us. Then I thank you especially for that. The recent chaos in the judiciary has led to a lot of questions in that arena, the latest being that two members, former justices, resigned. The reason put forward by Justice Humphrey Stallmeyer begs analysis, I believe. He said it has become increasingly obvious that fulfilling that duty or those duties face great difficulty in light of the ever-increasing tendency in our society to criticize and condemn unjustifiably those who undertake the task of serving. He said inevitably it causes distress both to the individual and to his or her family and friends. Is it then unfair, Conrad Enill, to say that it has become so difficult that we are in fact giving those who seek to hold office a bad deal?
There is a history to this particular issue, and I think that what is happening today basically is a function of what I call some core concepts. The first concept that we have to address is the concept that we practice of Westminster government. Now, we practice it literally, whereas other jurisdictions practice it differently.
Mr. Enill, let me beg of you, are you on speakerphone, and is it possible you can pick up the receiver for us at all?
No, I'm not on.
You're not on speakerphone. Okay, the echo I'm getting is merely our connection. All right, I do apologize. Do continue, sir.
You are getting an echo?
Just a little echo. It sounds the room itself is kicking back at me, but that's all right.
So if I move to another location, might that help?
Yes, if I can get one with less, not as active a room that is not as alive, as it were, maybe the echo could be reduced substantially, and that would be of great service to us.
No problem. I've just changed my location.
Then I thank you very much. Do continue with your point, sir. We were talking about are we handing a bad deal to those who seek to serve the public interest?
No, I think it starts. So I was saying it starts from our interpretation of our political system. Our system basically is adversarial. It means that the opposition and the government generally interpret their roles in some instances as different sides of a particular divide. Now, in other jurisdictions that are a little bit more developed than we are, and hopefully we'll get there one day, once the elections are over, both the opposition and the government sits down to run the country until the next election, and then they get at one another again, and then they settle down. We don't practice that from my experience. From my experience, we practice it from the day you get into government. The job of the other side is to get rid of you, and therefore it creates a different kind of environment. And what happens in that environment is that anybody who is selected by one party is subject to the same kind of attacks, if you will, that you would find in an adversarial type relationship. In those circumstances, therefore, even if your intention is to serve, you have to recognize that service would not mean simply going and doing your job. It means doing your job within the framework of the political theater. And what the political theater says is that since you offered yourself to serve, then recognize that we are prepared to deal with you politically. And invariably what happens is that individuals who are well-intentioned chose the particular professions that they chose on the basis of reasons that are non-political in nature. And therefore, when you get into that environment, usually what happens, it becomes very uncomfortable. You find yourselves under attack by individuals who may want to ensure that you do not do well, because if you do well, it means that the administration that may have appointed you will do well as well, and that's really not the total context. So I'm saying that to say that there are some of our politicians who practice the art that way, and once you do it that way, it lends itself to the kinds of things that we see happening in our society today.
1.4 million people, the population of Trinidad and Tobago. Invariably, if that sort of adversarial situation happen for institutions that should not be political, we're going to find ourselves real fast and in a hurry with nobody to serve. Are you laying the blame of this unfair, antagonistic, hostile serving environment at the feet of politicians?
No, I think it is the parties. Well, let me put it differently. Politicians respond to their constituents, and therefore their constituents are the ones that determine how the behavior of politicians would be looked at, and therefore, unless the population gives different instructions to the politicians, they will continue to serve the way that they have. So I think it is a conversation, if you will, that must occur with the population telling its political parties that what we would like you to focus on when you get into power is not on winning the next election particularly, but on doing what you have to do in the best interest of the country, and how the population will decide who is in a position to lead the country would be based on ideas rather than other considerations.
Information release from the President's office speak to Justice Humphrey Stallmeyer, continuing as part of the reason why he has quit public life. He said, "It's unfair of me to continue to inflict that distress upon those for whom I have so much love and regard. I find myself with no alternative but to depart public life." Part of one of the things that I'm trying to reconcile, and then you can probably help me, Conrad Enill, is this. When you decide to serve in public life, there is a part of you that you give up. In addition to that, we've got some competing interests here. One, folks will criticize generally, and then you've got the competing interests of privacy, accountability, and valid public scrutiny. Is this a case, you think, in any way one of thin skin, or you think that there is a valid, irrefutable argument to buttress the point raised by Justice Stallmeyer?
Well, I think that somewhere in the entire conversation, there's a little bit of all of those. You see, Trinidad and Tobago is in a different place today than it was many, many years ago. In 2000, those who went into political office managed a revenue stream of $10 billion. And quite frankly, yeah, that's a lot of money, but, it's $10 billion. Today, we're talking about $60 billion. And therefore, because we're talking about $60 billion, it means that if you control the economy, if you control the government, to a real degree, you are going to be in a position to command significant influence. And insofar as that is concerned, the redistribution of those resources can change the fortunes of individuals. It means the stakes are different. In those circumstances, therefore, it is a lot more attractive for interest groups to ensure that they are well positioned. Once that is the case, it means that there is a lot more involved than simply serving your country. There is serving your country, but within the context of who is going to lose and who is going to win within the context of that distribution. So if you have decided willingly that you wanted to make it a better place, then you need to understand what that means in the context of you. In a real situation, therefore, if you're doing it for the correct reasons, and that is to say you're doing it because you really want to serve, to a very large extent you are destroyed. If you're doing it, however, on the basis of some group or some interest group, then they would protect you. And it means that whenever you get out, you simply continue with your life, as some have done. Those who are actually involved for the reasons that make sense for the country find themselves having to do one or two things. When they leave office, either they leave, they become self-employed, they do consultancies or other things, but insofar as getting back into a normal life and doing normal things, the society is too small, and therefore you are never going to be able to live down that unless you are independently wealthy and you go back to doing the things that you did before.
What is the role of media, you believe, in this context, in the sense that they are trying to seek, at least they are charged with seeking the public interest, and as such must scrutinize, but they are those who are in office who believe that the media, conventional media anyway, is complicit in demonizing these institutions?
I think that the whole issue of political campaigning, for example, has an element of media marketing repositioning in it. And during the course of an election, a lot of that occurs. What happens is that in the normal course of everyday life, some of the players are still involved in the media, and therefore some of the strategies move from political campaigning into normal everyday activity. And once it gets there, then the lines become very blurred. And once the lines become very blurred, then the whole question of what is politics and what is government and what is in the interest of the country and what is transparency and who's supposed to know what becomes a very strange thing. If you are in government and you are basically operating within the law, then the transparency issue cannot be because somebody says so. And unfortunately, in many instances, we have a lot of commentators who speak as if they know, but quite frankly, they do not know, and they do not know that they don't know. But that becomes the public's view, because in some instances, the public will believe that those who are in fact providing the information do so from knowledge, and that's not usually the case.
My guess is Conrad. Enill, how better, because we are going to need people to serve all the time, how can we better incentivize those willing to serve?
I think we have to do two things, quite frankly, and it is done in some jurisdictions. One has to recognize that people who are going to serve, once they leave office, they're basically destroyed. And therefore, if we are going to get good people, what we need to do is to make sure that the exit arrangements for them, having served the country, are in fact in place. If you do that, it means, therefore, that if I go into office and I serve my country well, then my country has looked after me well. What generally happens is that if you go into office and you serve your country well, it means that you would have held somebody to account. It means you would have held somebody to a standard that they may not appreciate, and therefore they will get even with you whenever you demit office.
You would have
very simple.
You would have broken some eggs. It does raise the question, though, of properly compensating those in office. I mean, that's the point you're making. The Prime Minister, remember, the current Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, even before the election, spoke of increasing the salaries of members of Parliament so that they can better focus on their constituencies and become more efficient and dedicated, as they would no longer have to do outside jobs for sustainability. Now, this was deemed unwise, as it would not sit well in the current economic and political climate. It does remain a problem, however, because no matter what climate you have, if you've got people making the, quite frankly, sad salaries as MPs right now, and the Prime Minister, what does he make, approximately $60,000 a month?
Yes,
when you've got that coming in, well, folks have to go outside. Is it so unpalatable, though unpopular, to raise that topic again about properly compensating those who serve?
No, you see, I have a different view on that, and my view is that you cannot ask individuals, and every time I say this, people say we get involved in the accountability issue. So you cannot expect that an individual who is not trained in a particular activity can make decisions about that activity. In other words, what should the salary of an energy minister be? An energy minister really has to understand the workings of the most complex part of our business. That business provides us with, at any point in time, $32 billion worth of resources.
Mm-hmm.
It is involved in 64% of our natural hydrocarbon resources, and it competes in 115 countries around the world. Now, you are asking a member of the public to comment on this particular resource because of what? Because of political considerations? Well, that makes absolutely no sense. You cannot ask people to comment on matters for which they are eminently not qualified to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask people to comment on issues that affect them, what leadership they would like to have. But insofar as once you are being led, you have to decide in your own mind who are the best people that will assist you, and you have to look at that in the context of the marketplace. And therefore, if the marketplace is saying that this particular resource can in fact command X or Y or Z in the marketplace, why are you asking this resource to basically come to help you with your problems? Because quite frankly, government is a lot more complex and is a lot more difficult to manage than the private sector.
Yes.
For some level of lower resource. Now, Prime Minister Manning used to say that, listen, there is a cost to public service because you have to give back, and therefore that is the difference in terms of the salary issue. But as we get more and more individuals who have gone to school, who are trained, who have the experience and the expertise, and they can in fact do other things, the question that arises is the country being served by having a suboptimal manager? And my view is no. Because what happens is that one bad decision can cost the country $30 million.
That's right.
It has happened to me. I've seen it in government where an officer, by virtue of changing the wording on a contract, cost the government $30 million and can go the next day. Now, the skill set that is required to understand those issues is not a skill set that you would find anywhere. But if you're not prepared to pay for it, then you're going to pay for it in losses. And when you pay for it in losses, it is worse, in my view, than paying for a resource that can cause you to reduce the losses.
From day one, I was in agreement with that, and I know, too, there is no such thing as a convenient time to raise it, but I am happy that we are on it because at the end of the day, if you're looking to right your ship, you want the best minds. If you're looking for new ideas, you want young people. You cannot take young, qualified people and offer to pay them, what is it now? A cabinet minister, I guess, makes something like about $41,000 a month.
40,000.
I mean, right, a non-cabinet minister is going to make like about $33,000.
Yeah,
I mean, you cannot take young minds who have spent time and now on the market, they can go out there and make 3 times that. And you ask them now to sit down in an office, exclude all else, and put their attention into the constituency and or into the role of governance they have for this kind of money. At the end of the day, you're going to shortchange them because they're trying to live with their young lives and develop it. They're going to shortchange at some point what they are entrusted to do, or find other ways to supplement it. And we have a problem. So it's either you pay at the front end or you pay at the back end.
Yeah. You see, in a lot of instances, I think one of the questions that people will have to ask themselves going forward is, can they afford to be in politics? So if you ask me, can I afford to be in politics? The answer is no. Because the cost to an individual in terms of current and future prospects is just too high.
Yes.
And therefore, it will not be attractive to those individuals who have the skill set to deal with the issues relative to the country. And therefore, what will happen is that the country will continue to move forward, but the country will never be able to be successful simply because you're not getting the optimum use of the resources.
That's right.
If I go into an organization that is in trouble, quite frankly, you need to pay me more, because the skills that I have is to move you from trouble to safety.
Yes, yes.
It can't be that when you're in trouble, you decide you're not going to pay me because you're in trouble. I mean, it doesn't quite work that way.
But at the end of the day, you must have people who are qualified and people who are dedicated and people who are not distracted when you're talking about good governance. I mean, what is it? A prime minister in this country, our prime minister gets about what? Is it about $60,000?
I 60, 72 somewhere there. But, I mean, the equivalent of that in... So let me put it this way. When we were looking for somebody to run Petrotrin, and I was chairman of the negotiating committee, and we were trying to get into the oil companies, which is where you would get your resource from. Their middle managers were making $120,000 a month.
While your prime minister makes $60,000, yes.
Yeah. So anybody we went and talked to said, you all can't be serious. I mean, you all have so much problems inside there. You all have a union to deal with. You all have human resource issues. You have infrastructure issues. That's the salary of a junior resource in our institution. Now, when you compare that to government, and unfortunately the government does have a very large footprint in Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore it is very complex. We have to deal with issues around oil, issues around gas, issues around policy, issues around competitors who have some of the best in the world working with them. I mean, when you have to deal with all of those issues, you need a level of resource that could respond.
I was so thankful when we contacted you and you said, yes, I will deal with this issue, because I feel one can easily fall on the so-called quote-unquote sexy topics or whatever is happening now and keep overlooking this major problem we have. The major problem is you cannot continue to underpay people, expect to attract the best minds and call on them for their optimum, for the zenith of their performance, all of themselves to put into this when you're looking at a PM getting $60,000 and a cabinet minister getting about $41,000 a month.
I was in Singapore attending a meeting of the IMF when I held office. And I had occasion to meet with the Minister of Trade in Singapore at the time and the Prime Minister. And one of the things we discussed was compensation. And he was very clear. He says, I am the most senior executive in the country because I run the country.
Yes.
Therefore, nobody gets paid higher than me. And because my ministers also have the same responsibility, they also get paid well. However, if we catch them into any kind of activity, there is absolutely no, that's it. You're gone.
Yes.
We will punish you to the hilt.
We are paying you, but the minute you step out, goodbye.
Goodbye. We're really not entertaining any issue. And
at some point, we have to get to that sort of thinking. And the reason we're spending the time is because a lot of people believe when you say you are an MP or you are a government minister or you are a cabinet member or you are the prime minister, they think that you're taking home a big wad. Now, comparative to those who are making it $8,000 a month, that's a lot of money. But let's be honest here. $41,000 or $60,000 is not a whole lot of money.
No, comparatively speaking, if you were to do a job evaluation and put the job of a government minister in technical terms with some of the other jobs, you would find that the gap is extreme. And the gap is extreme simply because of the responsibility associated with bad decision-making.
15 minutes before the top of the hour, my guest is Conrad Enill, former minister in the Ministry of Finance, also energy minister. I cannot have him here. Thank you for us clarifying that part of it. I cannot have you here without looking at Petrotrin. Bring better accountability and performance is what folks are saying about should have happened with the Petrotrin Review Committee. It was appointed by the Prime Minister in March following a cabinet decision that called for a review of operations at the energy company in light of its falling revenue, allegations of mismanagement and decreasing oil prices worldwide. It became the focus of attention. Are you satisfied with what you have heard about this report in the sense that it is reported that it echoes a lot of the problems but does not deal with the question of staff size and a couple of structural issues that are imperative towards Petrotrin moving forward?
I think that the whole question of Petrotrin is a political issue. There are other jurisdictions around the world that you can look at where you can see individuals who were or countries or companies that were in similar situations, and they actually moved themselves from it, and they became very, very successful. I think that the business model for Petrotrin, as currently practiced, may not be optimal in terms of both productivity and use of resources. In other words, one of the things that I think can possibly happen with Petrotrin is you can break it up into smaller entities and use the same employees as part of the ownership structure. In other words, if I had to advise on this matter, I would say we have some very skilled guys in Petrotrin. Why not break up the operations and contract them to give you very specific things and incentivize them to actually produce at a better level? Make them benefit as a result of better productivity, make them benefit as a result of better health and safety issues, make them benefit as a result of a number of other things that you are currently struggling with. Make them benefit, but also make them owners of some of the assets. If you do that, then there is a reason for people to want to do better, for people to want to make this thing a lot more, a lot better than what it is. I don't know, for example, in its current construct, you can in fact get individuals to take ownership for their individual areas and to actually do the best, because at the end of the day, that resource goes into a pool and they don't know how the pool is spent, and they don't benefit individually. You benefit as a collective group, and groupthink doesn't help. When you're into this kind of situation, it is really individual effort and it's really leadership.
My penultimate question to you, sir, is that the report reportedly acknowledges Petrotrin is overburdened with debt, which substantially resulted from poor investment decisions. It is unprofitable, and the outlook is for a worsening of its operation unless there is capital injection in the areas, for instance, of ultra-low sulfur, the area of increased oil production and asset integrity, all of which will further increase Petrotrin's liability. To your understanding, is this the correct thing to do? Or is this one where we have no choice in the area for the injection of capital into Petrotrin?
Well, every time this discussion comes up, I take people back to FCB. FCB was an institution that came from NCB, Cooperative Bank, and Workers Bank, and they had similar characteristics individually. What the government did basically was took the debt, parked the debt up in a particular area, had a specialized group start to look at it, and create out of the non-debt part of the organization something that had a different cost structure, a different market focus, and it created a different result. The facts are that the debt that Petrotrin has basically is government debt. It is the government that decided that they were going to subsidize petroleum products for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is the government that created the debt. And therefore, if it is the government that created the debt, servicing the debt is the issue, and therefore there's no reason why you can't take the debt, service the debt, refinance the debt, restructure the debt, and give the company some breathing room so that on the basis of their new normal revenue streams, they can in fact give you a decent rate of return. I mean, that can be difficult to do.
In thanking you and in conclusion, I want to bring attention to one poignant observation that is distressing, I believe, is that the poor condition of the company's Petrotrin's assets and a workforce that is losing its technical competence daily through attrition is what is called in the report a recipe for collapse. How distressed should we be by this?
Well, that may be so, but if I put you there and I said turn it around, some of the things that you would do is, first of all, you would decide whether or not there's a partner who wants to have access to this part of the world, who is prepared to bring capital, technology, and people, and who, on the basis of an agreement that you would have with them, that we have done in so many other different jurisdictions, will transfer new knowledge into the company. Additionally, if, for example, the company was to go into deep sea exploration as its new frontier, which is where I think Trinidad and Tobago needs to go secondly, and it partners with an institution that has that capacity, it means all of a sudden you are no longer moving along the continuum of where petrochem is. You're basically introducing petrochem to a new era where, on the basis of its current knowledge-based technology and structures, it really can move differently. That's what you need to do with petrochem.
I thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. I know that you're on the move and you took up your time to stop off. Thank you so much, Conrad Enill, for taking the time to be with us this morning on Brunch.
Thank you, my friend, for asking.
You're more than welcome. Thank you so much.